All right, welcome in, everybody. Another edition of Head to Head, talking Alabama football with Mike Johnson. I'm Simone Eli. The Tide sneaked by South Carolina as they prepare for the third Saturday in October, a date in Knoxville against Tennessee. It'll be a top 25 matchup between these two teams as they look to stay in the upper echelon of the SEC. Let's go head to head. All right, guys, let's get right into it. Mike, looking back at last week, I know that it was there was a lot of positive, a lot of negative, a lot of things that fans are saying. What is going on in Tuscaloosa? In your opinion, what is going on in Tuscaloosa when you look at Alabama sneaking by South Carolina?
What is not going on in Tuscaloosa? It's probably a better question right now. I actually sent this out on Twitter after the game. I was like, I don't know that I was shocked. You and I talked about it. Like, I was not shocked by the Vanderbilt loss. Vanderbilt does things at a very high level.
Yep.
Diego Pavilla's been in that offense. They know how to operate. Like, I was like, Bama got beat. Mm-hmm. And this past weekend, I felt completely opposite, Simone, about what I was watching. Like, it didn't feel like South Carolina was beating Alabama. It felt like Alabama was doing everything in their power to gift the game from South Carolina. And situational awareness, I think, was my biggest takeaway. Obviously, X's and O's wise, there's a lot of things that you can kind of look at and say run game, pass defense, coverages, everything else. But just situational awareness, I think, was my biggest takeaway. Milroe has the safety as he throws the ball away out of the end zone. He also throws the pick right before halftime that directly leads to 3 points. Right before all that happened, you give up the fourth down play that leads to a touchdown as well. So a lot of head scratchers. You feel like they're going to pull away at some point. You jump out to the 14-0 lead, and then you have all those kind of boneheaded moves right there at the end of the first half, and it leads to the game being a lot tighter than you think it should be. And then the second half, it had its ups and downs. Obviously, you had the interception from Milroe as well, and the onside kick, which made things a lot closer than it should have been. Here's situational football. How about this? Damani Jackson picks off the ball to seal the game. You could tell that he wasn't sure if it was going to be a safety, if he knew.
I didn't know either.
Out. I still don't know. But here's the thing: he runs the ball out. Okay, great. We're going to avoid the safety. We'll take all the confusion out of that.
And he kept going.
But then the clock's at 0, and we're still running. I'm like, why are we still running? The game is over as long as you just hit the ground. The only way that anything bad can happen is it for you to run into a tackle, and yet we still kind of ran the ball back. So just situational awareness, I think, my biggest takeaway. As far as the struggles against South Carolina, and they got a lot of things to clean up if they're going to be successful down this stretch run against the SEC. I think it almost comes in levels too, Simone, when you look at this defense. I actually thought last week, upon further review, that the defensive line played pretty well. Like, I think that, a lot of people talk about the run game and everything else and things going on. I think the defensive line is starting to kind of come into its own. I think they're playing pretty physical. I think the linebackers are hesitant. They're thinking a lot. They're diagnosing a lot, and that's going to happen with this scheme where you have two linebackers on the field and you're in nickel all the time. The linebackers have a lot on their shoulders, right? And then on the back end, when you look at the secondary, they are getting schemed up in a lot of different ways, right? And you talk about the fourth down play. I know you saw that where a couple of vertical routes, you kind of make the safety kind of choose one, and then one guy kind of comes open, things like that. That takes repetition, right? They've seen that now. Hopefully they can diagnose it, not make some of the same mistakes they made last time. But like I said, I also look back at the secondary. They're playing a style in the secondary that kind of turning down contact a little bit, I want to say. I'm trying to think of a gentle way to say this. It's like they're not playing with the physicality that you saw from some of the great DBs and secondaries, the Mika Fitzpatricks of the world that you saw, a number of years ago. So there's different problems at different levels. I don't think it's just a matter of saying Ken Womack's scheme is not good. And I know that there's podcasters and YouTubers that are pointing with their laser pointers at the TV, and Shane Beamer comes out and says they're going to give you opportunities. To me, Shane Beamer's comments meant that you're going to get man coverage and you're going to go beat that guy, right? I mean, you're going to be put up to bat. So I don't think it's as simple as saying there's one thing. And I think that Ken Womack's a good coach. I think schematically they're trying to do a lot of the right things. It just looks like there's a lack of understanding at this point. And once they're able to play fast, then I think we'll get a full picture on what exactly he is as a defense coordinator. And you know what's funny, Simone, is I obviously talked to a ton of Alabama fans, and I've heard from some, and I am this way, so I kind of vibe with it. Man, I like the old school gritty approach. I don't like I like the tough coaches. I like the coaches that are going to lose their mind. To your point, I think people forget that this is not that era. It's not that era of college football.
Absolutely not.
We can't
You're
be
right.
a prisoner. We can't be a prisoner of the moment and say, well, we want Nick Saban. Nick
Yeah.
Saban left college
For a
football
reason.
because that's not what this is anymore. This is different. Guys can literally, any guy on this team right now could say no thank you, and he's out. So like I said, if I'm giving a message to Alabama fans, give it time. And don't be a prisoner of the moment and say, well, I want that back. That's not coming back. That's not coming back. Those guys that coach like that, guess what? We can talk about Brian Kelly at LSU. Brian Kelly tried to get transfer portal defensive linemen, and nobody wanted to come play for him. And it just you can't do that anymore in college football. Kirby Smart right now, and you just beat him 2 weeks ago. He's kind of alone on an island with his style of coaching. So you have to find a guy who's not always on edge, but still coaches with the edge. And I think that's kind of be the fine line that we try to find for Jaylen Moore here in the next 6 games.
And it's so true. I mean, there's a reason that Nick Saban said this is not for me anymore. And I think someone got mad at me saying that a few weeks ago. Like, the dude left. Like, no one forced him out. He said, I don't want to sit here and talk about money. I don't want to sit here and talk about playing time. I want people that want to love this program just for the love of the game and for the love of wanting to make themselves as valuable as possible before going to the NFL. And that's not what football looks like in 2024. So 1, get over that. And 2, stop expecting it. And 3, there's a lot more parity in college football because people can leave at any given moment. So it's going to be closer against a lot of teams, and it's not going to get any easier on Saturday. And when you look at this Tennessee team, Mike, I mean, this is not the Tennessee of, the years and years of Alabama beating Tennessee. And the last time that Alabama went to Knoxville, man, that was one sight to be seen. I just rewatched that celebration, and there was, as we know, a lot of storylines as Nick Saban off the field and players off the field and all the drama that came with that. This is not going to be an easy environment. This is certainly not the years of Alabama just dominating Tennessee and pulling out their cigars in the third quarter.
Well, yeah, and before Bama fans respond to me in this video and saying, well, we got to go find a tough coach, and I don't care what this guy says, and blah, blah, blah. Let me just bring you in on this. Josh Heupel is in year, I don't even know what, 4 or whatever at Tennessee.
Yeah, something.
I would be much more concerned as a Tennessee fan right now with the lack of toughness I'm seeing than I am with Jaylen Moore. And I think that all the things that I'm talking about that Alabama's facing in year 1 under Jaylen Moore, Tennessee's facing all those things years down the road in Josh Heupel's team. They got bullied by Arkansas. I mean, they just got straight up bullied by Arkansas. The interior of the offensive line got absolutely demolished and wrecked by an Arkansas team that had no business sticking with you in that game and then end up beating you, right? Yeah. There were times that Tennessee could have put their foot on the throat and stomped it out and put it away. It did not happen, right? Yep. And then you see them go with Florida, one of the worst defenses in the SEC, one of the worst teams in the SEC, 17-7 going to overtime for a team at Tennessee that you thought would average 45 points a game with Nico as the quarterback. You're not getting that. And I think that's the concerning part. If you want to make yourself feel better, and you wondered, and we were just talking about what the spread is and Bama's favored. It's like, how is Bama favored after the way they've looked the last 2 weeks? Because Tennessee doesn't look good either, right?
That's the point.
You're building up. If you're Bama, you're still pointing to the future, saying we're still learning the scheme. We're still trying to figure things out. Still have a lot of good players. Tennessee, I think, has a lot of things kind of hinging on that future over the next few weeks. That's, to your point, why I think they're going to smell blood in the water this weekend. They're going to be out to absolutely demolish Alabama. I think it's going to be a coin flip in a lot of respects in terms of what actually decides this game. Turnovers, interceptions, pace of play, time of possession, some of those things that you don't normally think about X's and O's wise. That's what's going to decide this matchup on Saturday.
Yeah, you referenced what Tennessee has looked like in the last few weeks. So there's got to be this mentality of, like, prove it. Like, we have this talent. We're now in several years in. It hasn't looked the way that everyone would have hoped. Everyone kind of projected it would look after they came out super hot to start the year. Of course, a lot of those non-conference games, and then they get into the Oklahoma, the Tennessee, or the Oklahoma, the Arkansas, the Florida, and it doesn't look like, okay, this is not, like you mentioned, the 45 points per game. Alabama enters this game as 3-point favorite. It'll be a 2:30 kickoff in Knoxville. Not an easy place to play necessarily. Not a good orange to have to look at all day. What do you, Mike, when you kind of diagnose where Alabama needs to get things figured out as quick as possible going into this game so that there isn't a second hiccup in SEC play, maybe what are your top 2 points of emphasis right now?
Well, I think, and this is something that I'm going to continue banging the table for, and we talked about it last week. You've got to show patience in the run game, and it comes from two aspects. Number one, the running backs have got to stop treating the run game like it's a track meet, and I get it. You want to be explosive offensively. It's worked for you at times. If you're Jam Miller, you hit the ground running, you get the counter GT, you get two pullers in front of you, and you're like, I'm going to go hit my head on the goalpost. When that doesn't develop, all right, sometimes it takes a slight hesitation. Sometimes you have to put a juke move on a linebacker or a safety at the second level. Sometimes you have to allow those big fellas to come off on the linebackers at the second level and to push that line of scrimmage, right? It doesn't always have to be a track meet. And if the hole's not there right now, I'm bouncing it outside and saying I'm running towards the sticks. Sometimes 6 yards is okay, right? And I think we have to be comfortable with that. The second thing is the play callers at Alabama right now, and Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan, they have to be patient. Right. And we talked about that after the Vanderbilt game. I didn't understand it. There's just no reason for me that Jam Miller, as far as our running backs, has 12 carries against South Carolina. Alabama, and I know that Bama fans feel a certain way, protection-wise, the right guard spot, the right tackle spot. Mark my words, this is one of the – if you just lined up mano a mano, Oklahoma drill, or one-on-one pass row, it's one of the best offensive lines in the country. All right, they have to gel together. But this offensive staff has to get these guys up to bat and say, dude, we're going to just tuck in behind you. And I don't care if the running back treats it like it's a quarterback sneak every time. If we can get 5 and 6 yards and then call another run and then call another run and then call Jaylen Moore run and then put Justice Haynes in and call another run, that keeps Nico Iamaleava off the field. So that's my first thing, patience in the run game. Second thing is you have to make Tennessee uncomfortable. And this has kind of changed from like a passing offense and an up-tempo to where now their running game, and the running back went over 100 yards last week. Now their running game is detrimental as well. So make them uncomfortable, get penetration into the backfield, force Nico Iamaleava into interceptions, into fumbles the way Florida did a week ago. I know that you say, well, it's a home game for Tennessee. He ought to be comfortable. Jaylen Moore looked uncomfortable last week at Alabama, right? So kind of take that. That us against the world mentality, get into the backfield, create a level of uncomfortability for Josh Heupel's offense, and hopefully you can get them off base. If Nico has to go first read, second read, third read, he's shown that he'll make some mistakes. So I think that's kind of the blueprint as far as I see it on both sides of the ball for Alabama this weekend.
I love that. I love both of those analysis there, Mike. Before we really give our predictions on this one, I want to just bring up Jalen Milroe one last time. We talked a lot about the defense and only touched on Milroe a little bit. Do you think that there is a level of a lot of thinking maybe going on? Like it's just there were uncharacteristic things from a week ago. As they move forward now, I know we all want to see the big pass plays, down to Ryan Williams and all those high flying, exciting moments and things. But like you mentioned, kind of grinding out those 4 yard, 7 yard gains and giving yourself a third and short situation where it looks like is really being able to control the time possession and just be able to move forward more comfortably. Is this one of those things where that you think in the locker room, they're diagnosing it too much? There's too many conversations. There's too much thinking. Like, what would you, I guess, say is the issue behind kind of what we saw from a confused or an uncomfortable Jalen Milroe last week? And is that something that you just chalk up as a one-time deal?
Well, I think that what you saw early on in the year is an explosive vertical passing game. I think that's what Kalen DeBoer does. I think that's what they did at Washington. I mean, I'm getting ready to watch the Falcons play the Seahawks this week. Ryan Grubb, who spent, 4 days in Tuscaloosa as the coordinator for the Seahawks, they're doing the same things. Like 2 weeks ago, the Seahawks called 7 run plays and like 60 passes. All right. Wow. That's what this offense is. It's vertical routes. It's explosive offense. And I think they have to find a level of comfortability. And I mean, Jalen Milroe with the rest of the offense, with the coaching staff, and what each other is good at. And I think that a lot of times throughout the season, right, there comes twists and turns with that. You get good at something. You show that you can do it. The defenses watch the film. They adjust to it. They say, hey, go do something else, right? You're in kind of chapter 2 of that. All right, you can do the vertical explosives. We saw Ryan Williams. We saw against, Wisconsin and Jeremy Bernard last week, and you've seen that, right? But when they're dropping everybody and they're and they're capping it off, and they're also kind of picking up some of the crossing routes, what comes after that? Well, you saw Jalen Milroe the first half against Georgia be able to run the ball a little bit. I want to see those be A-gap runs, and I don't want to see it just, heading off to the sideline, pump fake in, trying to run the ball. you have to find chapter 2 and chapter 3 of what this offense can do and find a level of comfortability there. So it's not just about vertical explosive plays. It's about just being well-rounded, right? And kind of taking what the defense gives you. It looked like Jaylen Moore last week was looking for the vertical explosives. He found them a couple times.
Sure.
When they don't allow that, what are you and what is your identity? I think we're still kind of looking for that second level of like, this is, if we can't do that, let's do this. And I think hopefully those conversations are what's happening in the meeting room right now.
As we move forward, Alabama will look to pick up another SEC win. Of course, the big rivalry game with all the changes in the SEC. No changes to the third Saturday in October as these two will go head-to-head. I can't believe we're already this late in the year. A 2:30 kickoff in Knoxville at Neyland Stadium. Mike, what are your memories of Neyland Stadium?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have good and bad. We lost there in 2006. I want to say it was still on Mike Shula's team. I distinctly remember Jimmy Johns was our starting running back, and he kind of broke free, but wasn't fast enough to go the distance. I love the guy to death, but wasn't fast enough to go the distance. And then we settled for a field goal on like the 1 or 2 yard line, and I thought to myself, game's over at that point. You can't settle for a field goal on the 1. I know a lot of Bama fans watching will remember that. It's like I wasn't starting at the time. I'm on the sidelines, a redshirt freshman, and I'm going, no, this is not good. We can't do that. I remember Tennessee when I got to school, they were almost mythical. The size they were up front, the guys they had on the offensive line, defensive line, it was like, oh my goodness, they were still vintage Philip Fulmer Tennessee. They were unbelievable to watch. And then I also remember 2007, Simone, the night before we played Tennessee, who they won the SEC East in 2007. The night before we played them, we found out about the quote unquote textbook scandal, the suspensions that were at Alabama that year. We were Friday in the hotel. And my buddy Antoine Caldwell, who's our starting center, is crying and leaning on our shoulder. And he's like, I'm sorry. And it's funny now because NIL is a thing. But they were essentially what happened is they're treating these textbooks at Alabama, treating it like a library. Like nobody really ever checked you on, what classes you had. You just got a book. You were on scholarship. So a couple guys getting books for their girlfriends, their friends, whatever. They got suspended for 5-6 games. So I remember the night before that game. And then we go out and beat Tennessee the next day, and we were still kind of riding the wave. And then I think the next couple of weeks it set in, lose to Louisiana Monroe, lose to Mississippi State. That was unfortunate. But we go up to Neyland in 2008, had a good year. They couldn't do anything offensively. And then, of course, Terrence Cody in 2009 has its ups and downs as well. We didn't score any touchdowns that day, so that's what I remember. But obviously a very big win against Lane Kiffin's Tennessee team. So a lot of ups and downs in that my 5-year period of redshirt playing.
That was quite a time. I feel like I just lived 20 years listening to those comments, listening to those.
Quite the roller coaster back then. Not quite as seamless as it was for the next few years, but nonetheless, man, a lot of good memories of facing off with those guys.
Man, I'm glad I asked that question before we give our predictions. Let's transition to that quick, Mike. Alabama, a 3-point favorite on the road in this game. What do you think it's going to look like, man, when this one hits 0?
You know what? I think that anybody that tells you they know exactly what's going to happen in this game is absolutely lying to you. There's too many variables. There's too many things. Here's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that Bama plays a time possession game. I'm hoping that we find an A-gap run, an inside zone, a patience from the running backs and Jaylen Moore, and I hope we keep Nico Iamaleava off the field. And then when he is on the field, I hope we force them into turnovers. I'm going somewhere in the ballpark of like 28-17 Bama in this one. I think we see the offensive performance that we, grew to expect out of Jaylen before last week. I think the defense actually, I know people don't like this. I think they showed strides in different areas last week. And I'm hoping those two things come together. But more important than that, Tennessee's not playing at a high level right now. So hopefully you can kind of keep them in that kind of window. I don't expect as many points scored as you probably would have thought before the season started out of both these teams. I'm going to settle it on 28-17. And you mentioned the 3-point line. I think Bama covers that, and hopefully they can put the game away late.
Yeah, I'm similar. I like 28, 27, ish to 21 something. I want to score a game, but Alabama having the control there late for sure, and maybe Tennessee putting up a field goal or something to make it look a little bit closer than what it is. I don't know if that's wishful thinking. I certainly do hope that things look a little bit. I know. I'm
the same way. Like I
easily go the other direction. You don't know. You don't know.
Like I said, anybody that tells you they know what's going to happen, they don't. With these two teams, it's a flip of the coin as to what version you're going to get. I'm just going to say right now, if you are a wagerer, don't go anywhere near this game. Like nobody really knows. It's just it's all going to be matchups and game plans and things like that. So
it could truly be 3 plays and a 60-yard touchdown from either team, and then that sets the tone, and somebody's on their heels right away. And you certainly hope it's not the tie when you're on the road there. People get excited, and who knows? We will see who is smoking cigars there on 6:30 at Neyland Stadium there on Saturday. But looking forward to it. Mike Johnson, appreciate your time. It's going to be another great week of college football. Alabama looking to stay on track in the Southeastern Conference. This has been Head to Head for Mike. I'm Simone. We'll see you next week.